The title of the talk is Cybersecurity via Signaling Games. I'm Dr. William Casey, and this is in collaboration with Jose Morales, Evan Wright, Rhiannon Weaver, and Bud Mishra at Courant Institute. The problem is cybersecurity. So that we think about that problem is how are we going to establish trust, manage risk, and mitigate deception in cyber attacks when we're constrained, we're fundamentally constrained by partial information, what Roman earlier called situational awareness. So we are never fully aware of the configurations of devices, the states of systems, the properties of software, and most importantly, the utilities of adversaries. And so our approach to this problem has been to develop a fundamental model which models the human actions and the safety properties that they can affect. And in order to do that, we use mathematical game theory as a means to study these systems of technology and human actions and utilities simultaneously. And it is, if I only had this slide to present, I would want to leave you with these 2 points. The first is that the game theoretic approach offers some benefits. The first benefit is that deception is something we can work with, understand, model, and define. And that allows a better risk estimation and eventually better policy decisions for our defensive strategies. The second point I'd like to make is that the mathematical testbed or virtual testbed that we can construct allows us to explore and create many mechanisms which can potentially redesign the decision-making of agents. And we can use those as studies to suggest new approaches to this problem that appears to be a fairly persistent problem. So to clarify our thinking on this matter, we've drawn up a scenario, and this scenario will help us highlight some of the features we want to model in our games. And I'll talk through this scenario a bit, and then I'll come back and mention how we are thinking about designing a response to the chronic cyber attacks, which we really believe always have some element of deception involved. So in the upper right-hand corner, we have Alice. Alice is interested in downloading a flashlight app. And by the way, this scenario is something that really happened, and we have the app. We'll talk. So this is taken from the real world. Okay, so Alice is interested in downloading a flashlight app, and she goes to the market and she sees 2 varieties. 2 options. This is simplified. She sees an offering from Bob and an offering from Reka. And Bob is a good software designer, employs sound architectural practices, tests his own vulnerability surface, and does his best to create a good product. And he puts it on the marketplace for 99 cents. So the proposition of utility here is an exchange, 99 cents for a functioning piece of software that has some quality assurances as well. Reka, on the other hand, has a different utility. And one of the points we're trying to make here is that Reka's utility, different from Bob's, is no less natural in a system that we have today, a social technological system with anonymity and difficulties with situational awareness. So Reka clones Bob's app, rewrites it, but injects a GPS tracker into the app and puts it back on the marketplace for free. So the trade-off here is an attempt to pilfer private information from users of this app in exchange for some payoff, who knows where, and some underground economy or something like this. So this situation is coming back to Alice. This is a fairly difficult situation. She's got 2 options. She really has limited information about those options. The situational awareness gap, which Roman brought up. So, and that's where Vera comes in. Vera is our verifier. And what she'll do is she'll analyze these products and test them for safety properties. Maybe the property here is anti-surveillance. And she'll find that Bob passes and Rekha's product is not going to pass. And so Vera is capable of providing a verification or a recommendation to Alice and allow Alice to make a better decision. And this is what we've suggested, is to consider a recommendation verification system. And what we'd like to do is organize these agent types, by the desired properties we'd like to have in a system. So we could have recommenders for liveness properties and verifiers for safety. Okay, so this is about cybersecurity, so we're going to talk mostly about Vera. And so the model that we've converged to is what's called a signaling game. And a signaling game describes a scenario played between two players. One player is called a sender, the other player is called a receiver. Nature selects a type for the sender, and this type, to be simple, is either deceptive or cooperative. And with the type established, the sender sends a message to the receiver. We can think of an app. And the receiver, having received the signal, decides an action to pursue with different equity outcomes depending on the nature of the sender, but the receiver is not going to know the nature. So essentially the receiver is in one of the two sides of this game tree and not fully aware. And in all of our models, we're adding an element that we think is very important for cybersecurity, and that is the receiver, if they want, can invest more time, resources to discover more information about the sender's nature. So for example, Alice can employ Vera to verify this product and determine which branch of the tree she's in. Okay. So the signaling game, played once as a single-shot game, is not very interesting. What we'd really like in a network system is to consider multiple repeated plays so that agents can essentially learn the strategies of other agents. And to do that, we've considered a technique from computational biology called evolutionary game theory. And what this allows us to do is construct systems of non-cooperative agents, all of which are able to select strategies in every generation. And the way that the strategies are selected can be tweaked, but generally the strategies are boosted, meaning that good performing strategies are copied more frequently, and poor performing strategies are not copied as frequently. And that mutation is also possible to continuously stir the pot. And that allows a vast exploration of strategy space by these agents to explore and exploit. And these strategies are encoded as DFA, deterministic finite state automata, sort of a Markovian controller. And pictured here are several examples from our studies. Okay. So using this general framework, which is signaling games, within evolutionary game theory system, we were able to explore a vast range of scenarios in cybersecurity. And we've been able to develop some papers, of which, I sort of see these papers as a sequence or a series of experiments. And as we were progressing, these experiments are hopefully getting more and more realistic. So I hope to share two results from these studies. And the first is an image. It's a movie of the basic system dynamics we expect in these systems. It's actually very interesting. The picture here is what's called a behavior simplex. And I'll describe the x-axis. It's from the side where you see Bob. These are this describes high-level, large numbers of cooperative sending in the system. On the other hand, on the left-hand side, are high levels of deceptive signaling in the system. And now, from top to bottom, at the top we have high levels of trust. So the receiver doesn't sense or perceive a need to challenge. And at the bottom, we have very low levels of trust. And this is that extra dimension that we're suggesting with our recommendation verification system. So now I'm going to try to play the movie, and I'll try to communicate. Okay. So now the system kind of finds a node up in the upper right-hand corner. That means high level of cooperation, high level of trust. Okay, and now what we're seeing is a shift over to more deceptive strategies. That might be a zero-day exploit of something of this nature. Users are being, okay, now checking is occurring, but there's a failure to cross over back over to the cooperation corner. We're still back in deceptive. And now finally, a recovery pathway was achieved through high levels of checking. So these are the type of dynamics we're interested in looking at. And we've applied, so from many of our experiments, we know we can actuate these game parameters to get different and variable system level behaviors. So we've explored this by use of a closed control loop for a cybersecurity problem called compliance and unintentional insider threat. So compliance was discussed a little earlier today, and deals with, I think we had the example of a USB, a USB transfer from say like a low-level system to a sensitive system. Okay, so why would anyone do that? Well, sometimes this can improve morale, or this can, form a local benefit for a sender or an employee. And so we've constructed the signaling game model for this scenario and designed the encounter architecture, as you see to the right there. And there's an important player here. He's a principal agent. And the principal agent is responsible for ensuring or protecting the organization from risks. So what's important here is that a non-compliance action creates a vulnerability, but also confounds their risk estimation. So that's sort of a double whammy. And in order to deal with this problem, we've suggested a counter strategy where that principal agent could employ something we called a honey surface. And this honey surface would essentially provide measures of simple observables that would relate somehow to the behavior of individuals in an organization. And as William Claycomb mentioned earlier, perhaps the social capital theory driven data science could help out in this and relate these observable risk measures to the unobservable risk measures. And what we then do is we draw the control loop here, where we have some behavioral sensing involving this observable risk surface, this honey surface, and then this allows the principal agent to do a gradient-based optimization to affect the game parameters. So now we're going to change the way we reward our employees, and we're doing that to actuate the highest level behavior. Like we want compliance, and these actuations are done in an effort to optimize a global utility function, which is drawn in the middle, but basically takes into account employee welfare, employee productivity, minimization of a vulnerability surface, minimization of a confusion surface because we're introducing a honey surface, and also some benefits to actually using that honey surface to detect a serious threat. And what we have explored here is how this risk-informed control loop can perform better than an uninformed controller. So in the green, in the graph on the right, is plotted over time, we see the global utility function as it plays out in our system. And as we can see, just a little information that we can infer from this honey surface allows us to improve dramatically those equilibria in the repeated signaling games played between the principal employee and the employees over compliance.